Hi everyone, good afternoon and welcome to the latest WISH webinar brought to you by Women in Social Housing. My name's Nicola Dibb, I'm the current Executive Director of Women in Social Housing, and it's great to have you all joining us this afternoon. So before we start, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background as to why we've decided to host this webinar today. So the idea started back in December 2019 when WISH had an event in London with our all our sponsors and our consultants, including Bobby Huff from Huff Bellis, who are WISH's PR consultants. And one of the sponsors said to me before the event that she'd like to give a quick speech about her journey into social housing. She's quite a young woman and wanted to share with everybody her experience, and was really passionate about how we could encourage more women to join the sector. So we had a really good session that evening, and lots of our other sponsors also participated in their thoughts about this subject. So afterwards I was chatting to Bobby, and he said that he is currently working with the BBC in terms of how they can make themselves more relevant to a younger market. And would it be a good idea to ask somebody from the BBC to come and address the WISH members? So I thought this was an excellent idea, because quite often the housing sector can be quite inward looking, and we kind of sort of do the same things all the time and are just talking to people that are in housing, and so that is where we get our information from. So we decided to host an event at CIH Brighton in March with Bobby Huff being our host, and he invited Tom, who is a BBC sports journalist, who has actually been appointed by the BBC to work on the subject of making them more relevant, making the BBC more relevant to a younger audience. So we had the venue booked, we had Tom booked, we had a panel booked, and we're really excited about this session. And then of course the pandemic came upon us, and we had to cancel it, so which was a real shame. So we've decided to revisit the event, and we're absolutely delighted that we've been able to put this webinar on, which is about the same subject, basically, about how we can make housing more attractive to younger people and women in particular. And so I will hand over, without more further ado, I will hand over to Bobby, who will introduce the panel to you, and hopefully there'll be lots of questions. Please use the chat box, and I really hope that you enjoy it. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Nicola. As Nicola said, my name's Bobby Huff. I'm the MD of Huff Bellis Communications. We're a comms agency that works in housing, specifically across a wide range of other sectors that are focused on social purpose and doing good in their communities. As long as I've worked in comms, this has been a challenge for all sorts of different organisations we've worked with, all sorts of different sectors we've worked with, from haulage to the NHS to media, which Tom's going to touch on. Everybody is investing their time and their money to bring in new younger talent to their sector. Housing's no different, and we've been involved in working with organisations to try and shape how they're delivering their messages to different audiences over a few years now. We want the best young talent to come and choose to work in housing and construction and the wider industry, but there are quite obviously some boundaries that we face. I think L&Q did a poll, I think it was last year or the start of this year, that only 9% of 16 to 18 year olds said they'd consider a career in construction. So there are some sort of barriers there that some perceptions issues to address. So today, what we're going to talk about with the panel and through Tom's presentation is that what some organisations are currently doing to address that challenge, to bring new people into the sector, but to also keep the good young talent that we already have, and then what we could be doing differently, and maybe hopefully inspire a few new ideas and some thoughts for you guys to take away and back to your organisations. So in terms of who we've got with us, we've got Tom Rostance, who works for BBC Sport. As Nicola said, Tom's been working on a project for a while now on what the BBC is doing to attract young audiences. And having heard Tom talk about it over the years, it's a really interesting approach. And you can talk through what's gone well and what's gone maybe less well. There's definitely been some learnings on the way. And then we've got our expert panel who are going to be talking about their experiences, how they got into social housing, and again, like I say, what we can do to attract more talent, what organisations are currently doing to keep the good people that we've got. So we obviously have Nicola on our panel, Exec Director of Wish and MD of Nicola Dibb Associates as well. We've got Crystal Hicks, who's from Wish North East and is the Assistant Director of Customer Services at Your Homes Newcastle. Shelley Williams, who's from Wish York and Humber and is the Senior Solicitor at Bevan Britton. And Kimmy Oguntoya, who's from Wish London and Say Property Consulting. So we've got a really good panel today to pick up those questions. If, as you're listening to presentations and as you're hearing to our panels give their opening remarks, if you've got questions, please do. There's a Q&A box. There should be a Q&A box on your screen. If you send your questions in, then I'll quite happily pick it up with the panel. But the more questions that you submit, the easier my job is. So please keep sending them through. We're going to start with a couple of polls just to sort of kick off the conversation. One, we hope you don't mind us asking, but we were keen to understand how old our audience currently is, who it is that we're talking to, so we can sort of get a sense of who's in the room. And then we've got a question around what your organisation is doing to target people, target younger people in your recruitment, and whether you know that that's something that's being done. So I will just launch these polls. If you just take a couple of seconds just to fill those in. And this will really help us sort of formulate some of our chats ongoing. They're just coming through. Okay, I will stop that there because I think that's everybody. So it looks like the I don't know if you can see the poll results. That's just so it looks like the majority of you are in the 25 to 30 4-year-old age bracket, and a pretty even spread there throughout the other demographics. And then in terms of whether organisations are actively targeting younger people in your recruitment, looks like the majority of you think that you are, which is really good news, and will help sort of with some of our panel discussions later on. So that's all from me for now. I will pick back up with our Q&A a little bit later on, but for now I'll hand you over to Tom, who's going to share his presentation. Thanks, Tom.
Hello, everyone. Good to see you all. Yeah, as Bobby says, I'm a sports journalist with BBC on the website. And so what I'm talking about is not really to do with housing, but a lot of it is applicable to all sectors. So I'm just going to try and share my screen. So yeah, you are not alone. So what do I mean by this? What I mean is, if you are struggling to reach a younger audience in terms of who you're trying to attract, everybody is, from every media organization, every big corporation. It's hard. If you think about maybe when you were younger, there wasn't so much competition for your time and what you want to do. So it's hard to get hold of people now. This is just a quick graph. Shows you the BBC's reach, which is what they call, I think it's 15 minutes per day spent with the BBC. So that's indexed there. So if you, on the left hand side, that is 2011, and then to 2017, just to see it's down across the board. 65 plus is about the same, but the two at the bottom that have really fell off a cliff there are 16 to 24 and 25 to 34. So just within the BBC, they classify 16 to 34 as a young audience, which might be something you need to think about amongst your organisations about what you're classifying as young, because I think that might be pushing it a bit, depending on what you think. But as you can see, everything's down, and that will be across all media organisations really. So yeah, this just, you don't need to read all this, but just to see that the amount of TV watched by under 35s is down by 2 hours a week in 1 year, which is obviously a massive amount. And you know, you don't need to be a genius to work out the reason. They're spending more time on other things that weren't around 10 years ago. So they're on YouTube a lot, they're watching more things on Netflix, they're on their phones all the time. So this is a problem for the BBC because the average BBC One viewer is 61, the average ITV is 60, 55 for Channel 4. So if you think about how that impacts and advertising and things in the corporate world, but with the BBC, obviously, the way they're funded is through the license fee. So if your average user is in the 60s, then once you start projecting it 10, 20 years ahead, you obviously see that that is an issue. So some good news. This is a recent slide from this week, actually, that they asked a load of people 16 to 34 to give each of these brands a mark out of 10 for what impact it has on their life. And BBC is actually doing quite well there, 6.2 out of 10, just below Netflix. But YouTube there is the second highest, and that we'll come on to that later, but that's a massive growth area. If you think, I think it's only 15 years old as a company. So in terms of from start to where it is now, it is, you know, it's gone through the roof. So that's obviously very specific to the BBC, but while we're thinking about how your organisations can get to these people, so what do young people like? It's obviously a very broad question. There's lots of possible answers. Some of the research that we've done shows that, along with the obvious things that, you know, films and TV, music, everybody likes that. That's not specific to young people. But some of the things that are a surprise and that you can maybe tap into is like stuff like causes. They tend to be a lot more interested in than we used to be. If you think of, you know, there's a lot of protests at the moment, the environment, that sort of thing, society. There's a feeling that younger people are more sort of looking at the bigger picture than perhaps they used to before. I mean, this is all generalizations, obviously, but something to bear in mind. And some of these causes, if you think about how we all talk about mental health now, particularly younger people, compared to even 10 years ago, it's totally different. Gender issues, climate change, environment, etc. And I'm just going to play you a quick little video. This is just an example of how you can target a younger audience, and just want you to bear in, this is a tourism video for the Faroe Islands. It's only about a minute long, but just think the sort of holidays you went on when you were 18, 19. this is a video that they put out, and they were inundated. Apparently, it was really popular. Loads of rich American kids went over to do this. Hopefully, this will play. Hopefully, you can hear it. Yeah, go.
Far north lie 18 small islands called the Faroe Islands, isolated by the North Atlantic Ocean. Green mountains and plunging waterfalls, unspoiled and unexplored. But in a world where more and more tourists search for novelties, how can the islands remain unspoiled by tourists?
You turn the volume up.
Pioneers have found a solution.
On behalf of the Faroese government, I hereby declare the Faroe Islands closed for maintenance and open for volunteerism during the last weekend of April. During the weekend, all sites and attractions will be closed for regular tourists. However, we invite volunteers from abroad to lend us a helping hand by working side by side with locals, maintaining walking trails, fences, and viewpoints to preserve our beautiful nature. In return, Faroe Islands will provide free food and stay for everyone who helps out. I hope to see as many as possible on the last weekend of April. Thank you.
Sign up at preservefaroeislands.com.
So hopefully you could hear that, but basically they put a video out and they wanted a load of young people to come over, spend the weekend fixing fences and stuff in return for free accommodation and food. And it was really popular, and just goes to show that if you was thinking of how you could reach young people who wanted to go on holiday, it's not the sort of thing that you might first think that they would be interested in, but it's very popular. And then, so this is, again, when I touched on how younger people have got a lot more things to read to distract themselves now. So there's this idea that you have to go to where they are. Don't just expect them to come to you. So maybe 20 years ago, you might have put an advert in the local paper, see what job applications you get. You know, that's not going to work anymore. You've got to go to the spaces that they are occupying. So again, you don't need to look at all this. This is just which websites and areas young people reach on a weekly basis. And, you know, Google's the most common one, Facebook second with 96%. That number's falling a bit in the younger age groups. It's more popular now, sort of 30s and up, but still got massive reach. Then a YouTube at 90%, WhatsApp is 80%, and then you've got Instagram, Twitter, Netflix, Spotify, and the bottom one is Snapchat, which is growing. And then since this is from last year, and then you've obviously got TikTok now as well, which is another social media platform that is really popular amongst the younger end, so under 16s. This might be one to bear in mind if you're looking at how you can get into schools and things. And I mentioned YouTube, it's so popular now, and then we did some research last year that said 59% of under 16s are watching YouTube 2 hours a day. And how people watch YouTube is quite interesting, depends how old they are. So the older people, so like myself, I might go on YouTube if I want to find out how to do something, and I'll watch like 30-second clip, or, you know, I want to try and find a little bit of a film or a bit of music. I don't really watch it like TV, but younger people will sit down and watch these YouTubers and influencers and things. And this might be more specific to us, but so I thought I'd mention it because it's a big change in how we work, which is when you put things out. So when I started at the BBC, the busiest time on the website was during people's lunch hours. So they'd all be doing office jobs, and between 12 and 1 or whatever, 12 and 2, they would have a break, go onto the BBC Sport website, check the news. So we had a massive spike in traffic, and that's now totally changed. So the busiest time for us now is in the evenings. So from 8 to 10, 11 o'clock, people are at home, they're chilling out a bit on the iPad. And so yeah, 16 to 34s, when they most look at our website is killing time. So as well as that late evening, we do have a peak early morning, sort of 6:30 to 7:30ish, when people are commuting in, well, when they were commuting into work. It's probably changed a bit this year. So when they're bored at work, so just dipping in for a few minutes, but at home in the evening and last thing is a massive area for us. So it just might be worth bearing in mind if you're going to do like a social strategy or something, what sort of time you put it out is actually quite important, we find, in terms of getting engagement with people. Just a few more slides, but I'll just show you, this is just quite an interesting visual thing that shows you how quickly things change. So this is, I'm sure you're all familiar with Lynx, the deodorant. So this is 2 adverts. One is from 2006 and one is from last year. So this is the 2006 one. This is how they advertised. So yeah, I think you can obviously all agree that that wouldn't get made now. But in terms of how things have changed and how the perception of what younger people are talking about and what they're interested in, this just shows, you know, how big the difference is. This is from last year. I think this is Australia version called Axe, but it's the same company and it's the same sort of strategy. Oh, sorry.
Is it okay to be scared? Is it okay to not like sports?
Is it okay to be a virgin? To experiment with other guys? Is it okay for guys to wear pink? Is it okay for guys to be nervous? To have long hair? To like cuts? To take a selfie? To shave your... To be depressed?
Scared?
Go online to search and see for yourself.
So there you can see that's just how one brand has totally changed their perception of what their audience is in the last 15 years. I'm running out of time, but I'll just quickly rattle through. This is just for me to say that you can do all this research and think you know what young people like, what they're into. Sometimes you get it wrong, and sometimes it's just if you make something good, young people will watch it because it's good, same as other audiences will watch it. So this is, for example, Friends is one of the most popular things that younger people watch on Netflix. When you think it finished maybe 15 years ago, you'd find that quite surprising. But it's hugely streamed. With the average viewer who watches Friends watched 60 episodes of it in the last quarter alone, which shows that obviously during lockdown, different habits, but it's massively popular. And the same with the BBC. So this is from earlier this last year, I think it was, and the biggest show on the, well, not on the BBC actually, on TV in general, the biggest share of young audience was the Bake Off. 51% of the audience is under 34, which again, you might find quite surprising. It doesn't feel like a show that's made for younger people. And you can see as well that the most requested thing on the iPlayer for young audience was The Apprentice, which the same would apply. I think it's not made for younger people, but they find it and they like it. And just finally, I'll just play this one last clip. It's only a short one. And this is just a bit of a myth buster. Have you ever been told that young people have got a shorter attention span? And, you know, that's true to a large extent, but this clip just shows that you can get them to engage with what you do.
If you create something of worth, guess what? They'll watch. I saw literally this morning on the latest film I've just mentioned, the average watch time I think is 23 minutes average overall. Yeah, we haven't even got the kind of proper final results in, but someone else is just asking.
Still
it's
huge.
These are young people.
And I'm with you on the young people's attention span. When I talk about it, I'm like, this is not their attention span. This is the amount of attention you have to capture them, because they're fragmented. They've got a million things they could be doing. Yeah. So capture them. It's not that they have this. That's not changing. They're busy. You have to work harder to earn it.
It's basically just saying that it's a myth that younger people have got a shorter attention span. It's just that there's more competition, which is kind of what we were saying throughout, really.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Tom. That was really, really insightful, and I know you've sort of had to chop that down and whistle through it a little bit, and there's much more sort of depth to that, which maybe we can go into another time. But some really big takeaways there, I think, for me, in terms of what attracts the audiences, those younger audiences, in terms of talked about causes, and it was really interesting to see how those links adverts had changed over the years, and yeah, I know that's something we might be touching on, and then in terms of the relevance of some of the media and the content that you create, that actually you need to create good content, but then take it to where young people are as well, making content and then wondering why they don't come to you. So that was really, really interesting. We'll move on to the panel discussions now, and then come back to the Q&A. We've already a few questions come through. So what I'd really like to do is just go around our panel, just allow you to introduce yourselves, and then if you can give us some background on your career in social housing, and your experiences of what you feel we need to be doing to attract more young women into the sector. So Nicola, can we kick off with yourself? Okay.
Yeah, sure. So I messed up my A-levels going back in the day. I wanted to do estate management at university, but I didn't get enough points, but I really wanted to go away. So I was flicking through the prospectus and saw this course called housing, and thought, well, sort of it's property, it's kind of, you know, it was the Department of Surveying, it must be sort of something vaguely similar to what I wanted to do. And I got the last place on the course, not really knowing what I was getting into. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I graduated and went straight to work for a developer who was working with their local authorities, providing regeneration projects and social housing. And then since then, I've worked it for a number of contractors and housing associations on the development side. So I kind of fell into it in terms of, I didn't know that there was even such a thing as housing, but in terms of my career, I have been in social housing sort of from the beginning, really, and I've absolutely loved it. All the organisations that I've worked with, and you know, I've really got a lot out of it and met some brilliant people. What I just wanted to finish on was that Wish set up a video, or made a video about, it must have been about 10 years ago now, and it was called Change the Face of Housing. And we took it into a number of senior schools to try and open up the discussion and to engage with the young women about the careers in construction and housing. And I mean, even 10 years ago, I think it was a bit like what Tom was showing. The young people were very different to what they are today. And we finished the presentation, And I said, right, you know, is there any questions? And the 3 questions, I remember it so clearly, the 3 questions they said was, how much do you earn? What car do you drive? And have you ever met anyone famous? So I was a bit kind of like, right, okay, I don't think we've kind of got the message over properly here, or we just really needed to engage with them in a different way. So I think that it would be really good to get something out of today's session in terms of how we can make the sector much more appealing to younger people that maybe have got different drivers in terms of you know, their career going forward.
Thanks, Nicola. It's really interesting you say you fell into housing. It's something we hear so much, isn't it? And I guess that's part of what we're trying to change. Crystal, we go over to yourself.
Yeah, sure. Hi. So I'm Crystal and I'm 33. So I'm going to be brave and say how old I am, which I think just qualifies as young on the BBC's category.
You've got 1 year left.
So I came into housing through homelessness, which was a values-based decision. So I suppose that ticks that box, doesn't it? That younger people are motivated by values. But this is kind of my second career, I suppose. I'm only 33, I'm on my second, which is something else that's quite telling about younger people, that they move around maybe a lot more. And I came in at a senior level in housing from the arts and culture. And I think had I have started my career in housing 10 years ago, I don't think I would have progressed as quickly as I had done in the arts and culture, which is supposed to be something about the sector and it being a bit further behind other sectors. And I've definitely seen some of the barriers that maybe younger people face when thinking about career options and coming into the sector. So I think relevance is a big one. So, you know, we can do branding to make our organisations look like they represent or attract young people, but then they get over the threshold and nobody in the organisation looks like them, talks like them, acts like them, works like them. And I know personally, you know, I've sat in meetings where it's been all white middle-aged men in me, and that can be quite intimidating. So I think there is something there about, you know, we kind of have to think about how we present ourselves internally as much as we do about trying to attract younger people in externally. And I think that for me has come down to taking it on a bit of a personal agenda. So I think one of my suggestions for how the sector could really encourage more young people in is maybe individually seeing it as our agenda to carry the mantle for, and not always take it as a corporate or policy decision. So there might be some people on the call today who I've reached out to on LinkedIn who've never met me before, but I just thought, oh, they look interesting. And they're younger and they've maybe got some ideas. And I said, do you want a coffee? Like, no reason, you know, but just because I think you have to be a bit more proactive because we're not there yet in attracting the young talent into our organisation. So I think one of the things that we could be doing would be to reach out a bit more on an individual basis to younger people that we come across on social media and try and encourage them in that way.
Yeah, that was a really, really interesting insight. So should we go to Kimmy?
Hi everyone, I'm Kimmy. I'm on the London Wish Board. I'm an associate at SAY and I'm an operations committee member for Notting Hill Genesis. How I got into the sector was quite interesting. Both of my parents migrated from Nigeria to London about 35 years ago, 35 years exactly for my mum yesterday. And I didn't know anyone who worked in the sector or who worked in the industry. So to me, the messaging was not clear that there were professional routes that were available to young people to develop in. There was a lot of misinformation. The messages that I saw in terms of what a developer looked like was from the media, was from TV. and developers always looked like businessmen in suits who had no feelings and didn't care, and were always about money. And it's only by joining the sector and, you know, working with housing associations like Notting Hill Genesis and, you know, some of the developers that I see at Say, that I can see that developers are not what they're painted out as on TV. So I think we've got a perception problem in terms of misrepresenting why we work in this industry and getting that message outside. It's really great to see the images that Tom showed earlier, and to understand that young people are interested in causes, because, you know, our industry is all about causes, it's all about people, it's all about the community. And I think if we were better at selling ourselves to young people, so I think actually from school ages and up, if we were better at interacting with them and showing them what different careers in our sector look like, I think we would do better to retain them. And there are organisations such as Pathways to Property and Regeneration Brainary, which are doing exactly that, and they are widening that access, and they're illustrating the different types of careers you can have, be it technical, social, financial, all about the causes. Regardless, there's a role for everyone in our sector, and I think as the housing sector, we need to look out towards the people in the private sector as well, and to roles in government. And we need to embrace some of the really good initiatives that are happening and almost franchise them up and down the country if we want to retain talent. And in terms of speaking to young people in the language that they understand, you know, I'm completely in agreement. Vedro recently used memes to advertise roles that they've got and the apprenticeship scheme that they do. So you know, it's not for older people, it's for the audience that they're targeting it at. And I think the use of memes to advertise, you know, potential roles that they are marketing is a really brilliant way to talk to people in the language that they understand. So those are the kind of like the highlights in terms of what I think we need to be doing. Hopefully you still heard me all the way through.
That's brilliant. Thanks so much, Kim. I think we'll come back to some of that and maybe pick some of those points up with Tom straight after this about what the BBC has been doing for its external comms. Shelley, hopefully we can hear you now.
Can you hear me okay now?
Brilliant, thank you.
Okay, yeah, so I'm Shelley Williams. I work for Bevan Britton as a senior solicitor. I'm also on the Wish Yorkshire and Humber board. I've been on the board for about just over a year now. I've worked for Bevan Britton for 5 years. We've just had our 5-year anniversary, and I've worked with the same team, lovely bunch of people, actually for around 8 years in the social housing team. So I specialise in basically social housing, anything related to commercial and residential property for predominantly housing associations. So our team is quite a mixed age range, really. There's a lot of support for the younger members of the team, I feel. In terms of how I got into social housing and into social housing and property law, when I qualified, it was into the recession, and I'd always had an interest in property. So I was a qualified solicitor, but couldn't actually get a job as an NQ at the time because there just weren't any available. So I actually went to a Leeds-based firm and to apply for a paralegal's role in social housing. I hadn't worked in social housing previous to that. I didn't have any experience in social housing, but I did have experience in property and working with developers. So I got this role as a paralegal, and then a couple of months afterwards, the firm actually created a role for me as a solicitor, as an NQ, so that was great. So I had to take a bit of a back step to then move forward, and getting into social housing it's been fantastic, really, because I've always had an interest in providing, you know, services to try and make sure that there's adequate housing available for all backgrounds to access. I grew up in an area which was predominantly social housing, so I've seen the challenges that have been faced by families. So For me, it's one of those areas that really does make sense when it comes to the legal profession, and I think that the social housing sector in the legal profession is one of the most inclusive and the most approachable. For me personally, I've gone into a lot of schools whilst being at Bevan Britton and working with the other firms that I came from. I've gone in and done sort of careers days and things, and I've also gone in to colleges, and I've also become a mentor for some of the students, the college and school students. And I think that some of the major challenges that you face are, especially with people from certain, from some backgrounds which, may be a little bit less privileged, some areas where it's predominantly social housing, shall I say, that some of these people, some of these students, these youngers, don't feel like they're able to access careers such as, like I've become a solicitor. I grew up in the social housing area, and I think there are still stereotypes, and people are still, think there are still barriers to getting into certain careers. Possibly they think that to be a solicitor, you've got to come from a certain background, or your parents have got to have a certain level of income. And so I think that, I've gone in and I've had the conversation with them. Look, this is where I came from. This is what I've done. These are the different things you can do. You don't have to go to university, or you can do what I did. You can go to uni quite close to home, and you can stay at home with your parents and work all the way through. And that you can actually go into organisations, become an apprentice. We've got some apprenticeships in our firm, I know that, and or you can go in as a paralegal, or this is obviously talking from a legal sector perspective, but you could go in as a paralegal, or as train as a legal executive and get support and funding through the firm that you work for. So for me, I do think that it's about breaking down the barriers and making them aware that there are these different roles. And I think, as it's already been said, I think the social housing sector is one of the most inclusive sectors, and there are so many roles that they can look at. So I think it's about having people as mentors, people that are available from different backgrounds, that can come forward and share their experiences. So obviously this is a great platform, but it's possibly something that we could do via links into schools and via social media.
Thank you, Nicola. That was really, really interesting, Shay. Thanks so much. I think that leads just a quick one on mentors, because there's so much to unpick from those four talks. So thank you all so much for that. It's really, really insightful and some really different sort of perspectives. Just on that mentorship, Shay, you said about the importance of that, and it leads on to like the first question we had through. That important of having a mentor role. Nicola, that's something that Wish has been really sort of pushing for a long time now, hasn't
it? Yes, Bobby, absolutely. We had a pilot mentoring program a couple of years ago, and it was really successful. So it's definitely something that we have had feedback from every aspect, every discipline of the sector, in terms of how important a mentor is for somebody, especially a younger person, to have somebody to bounce ideas off. And especially when you go into an organisation and you're maybe even the only female in your team, it can be really intimidating. So mentor is an excellent way of building your confidence up.
Yeah, again, this links to sort of keeping talent. So the first question that we had through from the audience, it was around career pathways, and the question is, as a sector, have we always had those quite clear routes to progression. There's somebody that's put their own experience here, that they've worked for the organisation for 15 years, joined as a 23-year-old, you know, exactly the sort of person that we're looking to attract into the sector. Yet only now, all those years later, are they seem to be, you know, really understanding what their progression pathway could be. So as much as we need a conversation about, yes, we've got to go and talk to young people, when we do bring people into the sector, we then need to make sure that that's offers right, so that the message that we're putting out externally, it sticks and rings true, doesn't it? So Crystal, I know that that's something that's been like that you're quite passionate about.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to pick up on Nicola's point about the mentoring thing, like that doesn't have to be formal. So I have a lot of women that come to me for advice, and that's not a formal arrangement. You know, it's not like we've got a contract that says I'll mentor you for 12 months and this is the support you'll get from me. You know, I think if you think you could benefit from a mentor, have a look at the people who are around you and think, okay, I might just ask them if they would give me some advice on this, and that can be sort of develop into a coaching or a mentoring type of relationship. I think coming to your question about progression routes in the sector, I think sometimes we're a bit restrictive with our person specs and job descriptions compared to other sectors when we're asking for essential criteria on qualifications and experience, and do we really challenge ourselves to actually, is that an essential criteria for a job, or is it just a nice to have? Because for young people, you know, coming in who maybe haven't gone to uni or haven't gone down a specific route, they might not have that qualification, but that doesn't mean they don't have the skill set or the ability to learn those things on the job. So I think if we have really restrictive, you work in repairs and maintenance and you have to have this qualification to do that job, then people are never going to be able to progress. Because I think my experience with younger people is they like to be quite dynamic as well. Like I like it. I move from one specialism to another every few years. Like I like to try my hand at different things. And that's what my experience of younger people is as well. So if we're expecting people to go into property development or customer service or even voids for their whole career, we've got it wrong. Like people don't work like that anymore. So I think it's about organisations being realistic about what talent they actually need, what skills they actually need, and making sure that where we're starting with job descriptions, we're getting that right. And then it's having the opportunities to develop alongside that, so entry routes into professions as well. But it comes back to that thing of, you know, once you get into a position where you're recruiting people, whether you're a manager or a senior manager, you have to constantly be challenging yourself. You know, am I making this accessible for people from different backgrounds, for younger people to apply for these jobs? Am I really doing my best to give them an equal opportunity to take this, you know, progress their careers? I think it's on mute, probably.
Yeah, I've got to leave this off mute. We have lots of positive feedback about what you were saying there, Crystal. So clearly you've touched the nerve, and everybody agrees. Just I don't know if anybody else wants to come in on that, but I was just going to ask Tom, just very quickly, that you've talked about some of the changes that the BBC has made in their sort of external content, how they reach audiences. That's been reflected sort of internally as well, hasn't it? And you know, I think you were saying from your time at the BBC when you first moved up to Manchester, up to Salford as part of that move, it's a completely different newsroom now, is that fair?
Yeah, definitely. When I started, there was maybe 4 or 5 women in the team, because it was a sport website, and now we're nearly 50-50 now on male-female split. So that's one thing that's changed, and with that has come a slightly younger workforce, because a lot of those were younger. And then the next thing that they're trying to address is to have a more diverse workforce. But like Crystal was saying, once you start thinking about those things all the time, then suddenly you can make quite big strides. So even just the fact that you're thinking about how can I reach a younger audience with this job description, you know, that's a good start. And then once you get into the habit of doing that, then things will change.
I don't know if Shelley or Nicola, you want to add anything on that? Yeah, Nicola?
I just wanted to say that if you're trying to engage with younger people, it's about giving younger people in your organisation at the moment a voice. And one of our regions that's done that particularly successfully, one of our Wish regions, is Wish London. And they made a conscious effort last year to bring in more younger board members, and it's really paid off. I mean, when we were doing live events, somebody had the idea of why don't we live stream it, and and it was like, oh wow, we never thought about that before. And it was only because we had the younger team members in that environment and on the board who were bringing in those fresh ideas that then made is making the region much more sort of relevant to younger women that's working in housing. I just wanted to make that point, really.
No, absolutely, and it does shine through. Yes, Shelley.
Yeah, just saying, just obviously for our Wish in Yorkshire and Humber region, we actually reached out to a number of associations and organisations that we work with and encouraged them to bring younger members of the teams with them. We had an event on a boards basically, and so we encouraged members of the boards in our various organisations, clients and what have you, to bring younger people with them, and that actually did work out pretty well, to be honest. So that's another idea.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Tommy, again, just to sort of summarise on that, we've had chats before where you said actually the content that you put, we'll come on to content because there's a few questions about that, but content seems to stick better when it's delivered by somebody who represents the people that you're trying to talk to.
Yeah, it totally ties in with what you guys were saying there about who they see doing the job. So stuff that we make that does well on YouTube or social tends to be not necessarily a famous TV presenter that does stuff on TV. It can be just a younger person who looks like the audience that we're trying to get to, and we found that they can relate much more with people who look like them and talk like them. If you think about, we said before the start, if you have someone who's older trying to talk down to people, sometimes that's the way it can be viewed, even if it's not the intention. So you have to be careful with that. Whereas if you can find someone of the age and the background of the people you're trying to attract, you'll have much better interaction.
I think how often do we see a video from a CEO in an office that, and then we wonder why that doesn't appeal to different audiences. Sorry, Kimmy.
I just wanted to add, that's why I think what the Generation Brainery are doing at the moment is really interesting. So they've got school leavers who are interviewing leaders in the built environment. So I think some of them are like 11, 14, 15, around that age group. And they are interviewing the head of the Ministry of Housing and Communities and Local Government and Homes England, and asking them, what are you doing to make this role interesting to me? And what are you doing to make sure that there are jobs for people like me through this potential recession that we are going through? And so it's really compelling hearing it from, hearing it from the young person themselves to say, look, I want a role in your organisation. I've done some learning, I've done some research, but actually I'm really worried that your pay is quite low in comparison to other sectors. I'm really worried that you're not that great at diversity. How are you tackling these challenges? And hearing that conversation from someone who's quite sage and experienced, and from someone who sees it with outside eyes, is so compelling. It's really interesting. So if you haven't seen that, I would encourage people to have a look at it.
Brilliant. And could you send that link either into the chat box, or if we run out of time, which I fear that we will, we can circulate this after. I am conscious of time. I knew we would run close, but I think we've got time for one more question. And what is coming through is a theme of sort of storytelling. Deborah was saying that she worked as a career advisor previously, but until she started working in housing, had no idea about the benefits of what housing could bring. And I think Tracy had said that in her last message, that we basically need to get better at storytelling. The sort of, and storytelling to me is not just we'll do one-off press release, or we'll do a one-off job advert. It's in everything that we do. It's ingrained in our organisations, the way we behave internally and the way we behave externally. You talked about some of the different ways that you tried to do recruitment and sort of reach out to younger audiences using emojis for recruitment and whatnot.
Not me, Redrow Homes, so they're a house builder. So on LinkedIn, they had posted some of the recent images that they've done to try and attract younger people to the apprenticeship programs that they are running. And they're memes, so they take images which are from popular TV shows, and then they add, like captions, basically. That's the best way that I can describe a meme. And they're quite funny. They're 10 seconds to read, but they get the point across quite quickly. So I can send a link to those as well, just to give you an idea that it doesn't have to be done in the way that we've always done it. We can adapt, and we can evolve, and we can change it up. And sometimes things might not hit the mark in the way that we anticipate, but sometimes they will gain that traction. And I think it's just about trying to land the messages with the audience, trying to land the messages with the people that we are trying to attract. And I think that's how we'll get better at storytelling, because the breadth of our sector is so huge, it's so diverse, that I can understand why it's challenging, but we have got to try. Otherwise, the statistics that Tom has shown about the BBC, our sector's probably slightly older. And if we want our sector to continue to grow and thrive, we have to reach these people now.
I will cut us off because we're just I think we're just on time. But if we can quickly sum up, I think what we're really keen is that as Nicola said, what we can be good at is sort of internal talking shops. What we don't want this to be is that we want some clear action. So I don't know if the panel could just very succinctly sort of sum up what their hope is that the audience take away from this, and they go back to their organisations, and hopefully that's their message then to their managers and their team. Kimmy, I don't know if you want to.
I'll go first. So the only reason why I'm in this sector really is because of the Olympics, and because I did a work placement with the Greater London Authority. Otherwise, I would not have known about the opportunities. I would not have had an inroad. So I think it's really important that as we are going through the fallout from lockdown and the coronavirus, that we continue to provide opportunities, hopefully paid for opportunities, for people who are young and who don't have any other inroads into our sector.
Thank you, Kimmy. Shelley?
Again, I'm going to big up the mentoring. The only reason I got into law in the first place and thereafter social housing was because of an excellent mentor that I had. Didn't even know she was a mentor at that point, but at college, who basically introduced me to A-level law, and basically asked me if I'd considered going to uni. And the background that I came from, I didn't think that was achievable for me. That's something that I'd ever be able to do. So thanks to her, I'm largely thanks to her, I'm where I am now. So I think that I can't plug it enough, really, the mentoring, and there are different ways. Obviously, like Crystal said, there are ways where you can do it much more casually. But for me, I think that's a big one.
Thank you. And yourself, Crystal?
I think similar to how we approach the issue of representing women in the sector. I think within our organisations we have to be the voice and challenging if there's a lack of representation. So if you're a young person working in housing, it's your job of the organisation if they're not recruiting enough young people, and to make people aware of that, because I don't think it's always purposeful ignorance. Sometimes it's just ignorance, you know. So yeah, I think that we could all go back to our organisations over Teams this afternoon and just and say, there aren't really any young people in this team. Why is that? And challenge.
I think that's a really good point, that it's, you know, you can't always be left to organisational culture, which I think was what you said originally. And Nicola, just if you can summarise for us.
Yeah.
A few minutes over, but we're all right.
I know. Well, a bit like Crystal has said, in terms of, you know, the strides that we have made over the years in terms of changing the gender balance in the sector. Wish over its 22 years has emphasised the importance of networking and how, you know, getting out there and meeting people, and how beneficial that is for people's careers, and helping people to build their confidence and going back to their organisations. And I think that now maybe our new initiative, maybe we embrace it a bit more formally in terms of how Wish can bring everybody together on this subject, and work with the younger board members that we've got all around the country, and really unlock this thing, which is, for me, is how we engage with the educators, because otherwise we're just talking to ourselves the whole time. So that's something that I would really like to kind of take away from this session, and anybody that's watching it and participating in it, it is coming to Wish and coming together so that we can put together a campaign to really start making a difference.
Right, thank you so much. Tom, thank you so much for your presentation. I'll circulate it to everybody afterwards. Crystal, Shelley, Nicola and Kimmy, thank you so much for your input. It's been fantastic. I'm sorry we ran over, but thanks everybody for sticking with us, and we'll speak to you all soon. Sorry, Nicola, do you want to?
Just to thank you, Bobby, for pulling this all together, and to Tom on Wish's behalf as well. Thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you.